Chapter 81. Is it true? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 81. Is it true? At that moment, Chin-yu thought she had heard wrongly. She raised her eyebrows and lowered her voice subconsciously. Mayor Fong. Where did you get the news from? Chin-yu obviously knew Mayor Fong, but she had never seen him before. Her only association was with Madame Fong. Although Fong Ci was Lin Jinchuan's friend, even Chin-yu had never had the chance to speak much to him. Thus, Chin-yu had only seen Mayor Fong on the television. Not only her, but even the Lin family didn't have a close relationship with the Fong family. It's an insider story. You must keep this matter confidential and can't tell anyone else, the boy said, afraid of the consequences. The teacher told me personally. Chin-yu pursed her lips and lowered her eyebrows. After a long while, she looked up and smiled. How do you know if this is true? She had never heard Qin Ran or Chen Shulan say that they knew Fong Lucheng. Chin-yu didn't really believe it. If Qin Ran really knew Fong Lucheng, wouldn't she tell Ning Qing and the others? Why wouldn't she tell anyone? I'm not sure. The boy shook his head and pursed his lips again, deep in thought. Nobody would make a joke with this, right? Chin-yu didn't say anything but was a little distracted. In the end, she tucked her hair behind her ears and smiled. Maybe. This story was big but didn't have much impact. In fact, when the picture had first come out, many people had indeed followed the trend, but then many people on the school forum had spontaneously come forward to defend Qin Ran. The impact of the post on the school forum was actually not so big, but now that it was deleted, it was even more useless. Weibo probably had the largest traffic on the internet. Chin-yu thought about it and absent-mindedly opened Wu Yan's chat. On Monday afternoon after class, Qin Ran sat on her seat and slowly kept her books. Lin Siren packed her things and went to the cafeteria after informing her. Qin Ran had always been slow, and the people in the classroom all left quickly. Qin Ran, someone is waiting for you downstairs. A boy stood outside the door and shouted to Qin Ran. Qin Ran wasn't sitting straight and looked a little lazy. Her whole appearance and style were unique and her long soft hair was tucked behind her, making her feel very cold and chilly. The boy saw Qin Ran nod and his mind was filled with her casual smile. Mu Nan was waiting for Qin Ran downstairs. Is the school forum bothering you? Mu Nan was wearing a black and red plaid shirt. His originally cold expression had relaxed a lot. He was usually quiet, which made people feel afraid to come forward to communicate with him. His warm-colored clothes had somehow helped him reach a balance point. Qin Ran wondered why Mu Nan was here to find her. She smiled, holding her phone in her left hand. I'm fine. Mu Nan nodded, and the hand in his pocket relaxed. Mu Nan had been selected as the campus king of grade 1 the moment he came and was a little famous in school. He was considered cold but wasn't as arrogant as Su Yaoguang. The coldness just seeped from his bones. Mu-ing waved at Mu Nan from not far away. Cousin. Mu-ing knew about the post on the school forum. She didn't expect things to have calmed down when she came to school on Monday and couldn't help but glance at Qin Ran. Qin Ran nodded. She was on her way to the school doctor's office. Mu Nan went home with Mu-ing and they split ways. Beove not far away, the sound of a motorcycle's engine rumbled. Mu-ing was surprised. Someone rode a motorcycle to school. Beside her, Li Yuhan quickly pulled her sleeves, her expression changing. It's Wei Ziheng, don't block the road. Wei Ziheng. Mu-ing thought this name sounded familiar. She had often heard his name from the other girls in class and he seemed to be a school bully that couldn't be provoked. She couldn't help but look towards the source of the sound, only to see a royal blue motorcycle roaring over. It drove blatantly in school and did not stop. Mu Nan stood beside Mu-ing and Li Yuhan and couldn't help but stare at Wei Ziheng. Stop looking, Wei Zihang is the school bully of the school next door. Li Yuhan patted her shoulder. I heard that his family has some connections with the underworld. Can't you see that nobody is stopping him from driving his motorcycle in school? That motorcycle must cost at least a few 100,000 yuan. Mu Ying was even more surprised. She nodded, but her eyes still followed behind the motorcycle. At the same time, Qin Yu got off at NU Hotel and Ning Qing was standing in the lobby waiting for her. You're just on time. Ning Qing smiled brightly at Qin Yu. Madame Feng is already waiting upstairs. You can get closer to her. Qin Yu naturally knew this without the need for Ning Qing to say it. She nodded and followed Ning Qing upstairs. Feng Ci didn't come today. He was supposed to come but had been delayed by something. Lin Jinxian was there. I heard that you is going to visit a famous teacher in Beijing. Madame Feng looked at Qin Yu with a smile. Qin Yu pursed her lips slightly. Yes, I'm practicing a score for him. Ning Qing let someone bring Qin Yu's violin over. She saw that Madame Feng liked it and asked Qin Yu to perform a piece. Qin Yu didn't refuse. The piece she had rearranged was already familiar to her. Other than the difference in artistic style, her proficiency and basic skills would help her play well. Madame Feng watched as Qin Yu played the last note and was inexplicably a little distracted and thoughtful. What's wrong? Qin Yu's heart jumped at the sight of Madame Feng's expression. Madame Feng returned to her senses and took a sip of tea before smiling slightly. It's nothing. You're very good, you can even go on a tour. It was just that. Madame Feng felt like this style was very familiar. She had probably heard it before, but she couldn't remember where she had heard it from. She was only thoughtful. Qin Yu was used to compliments and had this level of confidence. She pursed her lips and said, "Oh yes, mother. About sister, I don't know if." Ning Qing frowned and knew what Qin Yu wanted to say. She hurriedly signaled to Qin Yu not to say anything in front of Madame Feng. Qin Yu pursed her lips and glanced at Madame Feng, hesitating. Tell me. Madame Feng took a piece of tissue paper and wiped her hands. Qin Yu seemed to hesitate and then finally sighed before saying, I heard that my sister knows Mayor Feng. Is it true? Chapter 82. Faced Master Wan, it's on the hot search. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 82. Faced Master Wan, it's on the hot search. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Madame Feng paused and looked up, slightly surprised. You have a sister. Out of courtesy, Madame Feng didn't know much about the Lin family. How was she to know that Qin Yu had a sister? Qin Yu also looked up. She didn't expect Madame Feng to not know about Qin Ran's existence. Ning Qing subconsciously picked up a cup of tea and avoided Madame Feng's inquisitive gaze. She always avoided talking about Qin Ran when she hung out with acquaintances. Yes. Qin Yu reacted and smiled. She felt bad, so she pursed her lips instead. She told people that she was close to Mayor Feng, so I just wanted to ask you. Who knew that Madame Feng didn't even know about her existence? She told people she was close to old Feng. Madame Feng seemed to understand the situation after hearing Qin Yu's words. She carried her teacup and laughed. That's strange, old Feng isn't close to a lot of people. Oh, so they don't know each other. Qin Yu lowered her head and covered her smile. I must have heard wrongly then. Because Feng Ci wasn't here, Lin Jinxian was sitting at the side and was just serving the tableware for the ladies without speaking. But hearing this, he looked up and asked Qin Yu, who did you hear this from? She doesn't seem like the kind of person to say such things. Lin Jinxian also understood Qin Ran. She didn't talk much and was cold. She was completely different from Qin Yu and had always a youngster's sense of carefree spirit between her brows. Because of this, he subconsciously defended Qin Ran. Qin Yu pursed her lips and looked at Lin Jinxian. She felt moody inside but still continued smiling. I heard it from someone else. Madame Fong wasn't very interested in Qin Yu's sister and changed the topic to ask about Qin Yu. Qin Yu wasn't considered the best amongst the ladies in Yuncheng, but she was still rather famous. It was rumored that she played the violin very well and was much better than Pan Mingyue, who only stayed at home gloomily every day. She took Qin Yu's hand and chatted for a long time. When Madame Fong left, Ning Qing asked Qin Yu, "What's going on with your sister?" "I don't know. I heard from someone else. She borrowed Mayor Feng's name and made them take down the post," Qin Yu said lightly. The school's medical office. Qi Qingjun carried a curly dog with black eyes out of nowhere inside. "Qingmu, prepare a cage for me. I'll let someone send it over to your goddess, so you must be careful with it." Qingmu was always very slow and kept a straight face. He wasn't very serious about this matter. When he heard Qi Qingjun mention his goddess, his spirits quickly rose. He took out his phone contacts and helped Qi Qingjun arrange the matter quickly. Lu Xiaoying was playing with his mobile phone and sitting next to Qin Ran. He didn't look up and explained, "Chengmu's goddess likes dogs. Other than Chengwan, Chengmu is most attentive towards her." He pressed his phone with one hand and explained casually. He swiped onto a page and his smile slowly faded. He turned and saw Qin Ran holding a foreign language book with her head down, looking very serious. Lu Xiaoying pursed his lips and put away his phone. He then stood up and gestured to Chengwan, who was fiddling with the mannequin on the other side. Chengwan had intended on ignoring Lu Xiaoying, but when he saw him mouth Qin Ran, he thought for a while and put down the stuff in his hands. Then, he followed Lu Xiaoying out slowly. A picture of Qin Ran and Feng Lucheng has been posted by someone on Weibo and it has been put on the hot search for promotion. Lu Xiaoying frowned anxiously. "I went to get the surveillance video last time from the school and posted it on their school forum. I suspect that it was the same person." Cheng Wan nodded, his expression surprisingly calm. But his eyes became darker. "You know the marketing techniques have always been disgusting, what can we do now? Should I make people take it down?" Lu Xiaoying wasn't clear about the relationship between Qin Ran, Feng Lucheng, and Principal Su. But to his knowledge, this must be related to the case from 3 years ago. He handed the phone to Cheng Wan. Cheng Wan scrolled through it and saw the usual sensitive and disgusting things on Weibo. The comments below were naturally unsightly. Lu Xiaoying saw Cheng Wan's expression darken. "Do it." Cheng Wan took out a cigarette from his pocket. Then, he thought of something and didn't light it, just played with it in his hand, his usual lazy smile gone. He threw the phone back to Lu Xiaoying, bit the unlit cigarette, and then said in a cold voice, "Also, investigate this person. This person has bought so many marketing spots on the platform, they must not be an ordinary person. I want to see who would be so malicious to a high school girl." Lu Xiaoying thought, who in Beijing doesn't know the level of Master Wan's scheming? If this idiot knew that Master Wan is controlling the scenes, he would cry. The spread of Weibo was unthinkable to everyone in school. Lu Xiaoying had already suppressed most of the marketing spots, but the next morning, the majority of the netizens on Weibo had already arrived at First Middle School. The personnel department of First Middle School held an emergency meeting regarding this matter. When this matter had spread on the school forum, nobody knew that it would reach this point. It was also about time that Class 3.9 came to know about this. Lin Siren and Xia Fei went to the toilet together to wash their hands and heard some people whispering about it. They searched and out popped a bunch of popular Weibo posts. They hurried back to the classroom to find Qin Ran. Ran. Lin Siren frowned. The people on Weibo are crazy. They don't even know you but are talking nonsense and even want people to come find you. Weibo. Qin Ran glanced lazily at her. Don't you have Weibo? Qin Ran paused and chuckled. I haven't used it for half a year. You don't have to care about the post on Weibo, go and find the dean first. Lin Siren's thinking was very clear. We can't deal with this matter and only the school can settle it. Lin Siren knew Qin Ran's temperament after such a long time with her. She knew that Qin Ran didn't care about this matter, so she dragged Qin Ran to Gao Yang's office. Unexpectedly, Gao Yang also went to find her. The school leaders are also looking for you. Come with me. Gao Yang pushed down his glasses and smiled gently. Qin Ran followed Gao Yang and went to the dean's office building. The female teacher from the last time was also there. She didn't dare to look at Qin Ran and just carried her things out. But when she came out, she saw Qin Yu going upstairs with a pile of materials. The female teacher knew her and they greeted each other. Qin Ran looked into the office. It's Qin Ran. The female teacher was surprised. You're close to her. Not really, but I just talked to Madame Feng yesterday. Qin Yu tucked her hair behind her ears. It's the mayor's wife. I heard some students say that Qin Ran knew Mayor Feng, so I asked Madame Feng when we were eating, but she said she didn't know her. The female teacher paused violently and turned. Thank you so much, student Qin. She turned and hurried straight into the dean's office. Chapter 83. Mayor Hotline. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 83. Mayor Hotline Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Qin Yu stood on the spot and stayed even when the female teacher had left. The materials in her hand were actually a guy's. She lowered her head and pursed her lips slightly. Lin Jinchuan's attitude last night had made her a little flustered. After thinking for a while, she lowered her head and dialed a number. Hello, Mom. Qin Yu glanced over at the office, her eyes shining. Nothing, I just wanted to tell you that I saw Sister in the dean's office. Did she call you? After one night of inquiries, Lu Xiaoying finally found the person behind it. He was surprised when he got the information. Who is it? Cheng Wan put down his pen and pressed his temple, his tone calm. Lu Xiaoying leaned to one side, stuck his hand in his pocket, and threw the information in front of him. You would never have guessed. I traced it back to the Su family. And it seems this person has something to do with the Su family. Su family. Cheng Wan leaned on the backrest and knocked on the table with narrowed eyes. Elder Su isn't this kind of person. Of course not. This is just a small figure who is associated with the Su family. How could this person know Elder Su? Lu Xiaoying laughed and then frowned. This person also knows young Master Su. Cheng Wan glanced at him, thought of the name, and was uncertain. Su Yaoguang. Yeah. Lu Xiaoying snorted. But it wasn't young Master Su who contacted the marketing person. It was Qin Yu, Qin Ran's sister. I think she knew about the marketing person through young Master Su. Lu Xiaoying was too lazy to remember his name. Cheng Wan smiled. She's quite bold. Maybe she didn't expect anyone to check on her. Lu Xiaoying analyzed him closely and saw that Master Wan's eyes were cold. Have you gotten the evidence? Cheng Wan picked up his pen again. I have a few screenshots and the transfer records. Lu Xiaoying reached out to touch his ear studs and clenched his teeth. Cheng Wan nodded and said in a nasally sound, split it in two. Send one to Elder Su and leave one. Lu Xiaoying understood Cheng Wan's meaning. He printed out a few sheets of paper and put it away. Okay, leave it to me. At the same time, inside the office. The dean was very polite to Qin Ran. Last night, some people have already subdued the hot search, but some insiders are still adding fuel to the fire. The school will settle the rest. Gao Yang was actually very anxious. He had come to the dean to minimize the impact of this incident. But he didn't expect the dean to have arranged everything even before he spoke. He was a little stunned. The dean looked gently at Qin Ran. Do you have any questions? He actually knew about Qin Ran's existence long ago, ever since Lin Chi had given him her files. At that time, he had rejected her. But who knew that she would be recommended by the principal to attend first middle school? She was also linked to Feng Luqing, so the dean found it hard to be rude to Qin Ran. Qin Ran raised her head and thanked him. She was quite polite, but her face was expressionless. Sorry for the trouble. Gao Yang's tense nerves loosened in an instant and he quickly spoke for Qin Ran. He had been wondering how Qin Ran would have done such a thing when she was such a good student. Bam! At this time, the door was pushed open. Dean, I just got news that Mayor Feng doesn't know any high school students. The female teacher walked in and stared at Qin Ran, her expression weird. What are you talking about? The dean pressed onto his temple, his head aching. You don't have to care about this matter. The female teacher looked at Qin Ran, sneering. I knew it. Why don't you ask classmate Qin Ran if she really knows Mayor Feng? The female teacher knew Qin Yu's identity. She would never lie, so the liar must be Qin Ran. Unexpectedly, after she finished speaking, Qin Ran wasn't in the least bit panicked. She just glanced at her indifferently. Gao Yang was a little confused. Why was this linked to Mayor Feng again? Dean. The female teacher looked away from Qin Ran and turned her attention to the dean. Student Qin Ran only used Mayor Feng's name to make the school cover for her. She doesn't know Mayor Feng in fact. This behavior is extremely vile. The dean's forehead was throbbing. He turned to Qin Ran and said in a soft voice, Student Qin Ran, can you contact Mayor Feng? After a pause, he said again, of course, it's not that I'm doubting you. I just have a few details that require Mayor Feng's help. He is involved in this matter, after all, so we must take some precautions. Qin Ran stood on the spot. She tilted her head, glanced at the female teacher, and thought about something. Then, she smiled and nodded. Sure. She was still calm and unhurried. The female teacher felt like something was wrong and didn't quite understand it, but she still passed her phone over. Wait, I found the mayor's hotline. You can call it. She handed the phone to Qin Ran. Qin Ran didn't look up and just turned the phone in her hand. She opened her address book and found a name. The female teacher glanced over. It was the address book, and she saw 3 words on it, Feng Luqing. She was so good at pretending. The female teacher didn't think that Qin Yu's news had an error and was anxious to expose her. She opened her mouth directly and said satirically, you even have the mayor's private number. You can call now, then. Qin Ran ignored her and dialed the number directly. Chapter 84. How did you know such a person? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 84. How did you know such a person? Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios 2 rings and the call connected through. Feng Luqing's voice sounded. Qin. Hello, Mayor Feng. Our dean wants to say a few words to you. Qin Ran directly interrupted him. The voice on the other end paused for a while. Okay, hand your phone over. Feng Luqing's voice became more professional. The dean explained to Feng Luqing. My apologies, I gave something for the child to eat and didn't expect this sort of big thing to happen. I have a meeting and can't take my leave. I'll let my secretary head over to the school. You don't have to worry about this matter, I will handle it well. The office was very quiet, and everyone around could hear Feng Luqing's voice. After all, he was Feng Luqing. He was imposing and his words were clear and concise. From the moment she took her phone out expressionlessly to the moment she said her first sentence, the female teacher had felt an unknown hunch inside. The office was silent for a moment. Knock knock. 20 minutes later, someone knocked on the office door and the dean and the others immediately stood up. But it wasn't Feng Luocheng's secretary that came in. It was Ning Qing who hurried inside, the makeup on her face slightly messy. "I'm sorry, so sorry, Dean, my child has caused you trouble." Ning Qing quickly apologized and glanced at Qin Ran, who was sitting at the side while looking down and playing with her phone. She lowered her voice and said in a poor tone, "Qin Ran." Qin Ran didn't look up and just ignored her. She kept her head lowered. Ning Qing's head ached even more. She opened her mouth and was about to say something. At this time, she felt a shadow fall in front of her. A young man carrying a briefcase walked in. Those who were a little more concerned about the world would be familiar with the face of Feng Luocheng, who often appeared in the news, and would be familiar with Feng Luocheng's secretary as well. This person who usually only appeared with Feng Luocheng on TV was actually here. The dean was shocked that Feng Luocheng really paid attention to Qin Ran. "Miss Qin." Secretary Li greeted Qin Ran first very respectfully. Only then did he smile and turn to the dean. He handed a business card over to him. "Hello, Director Ding. I'm Mayor Feng's secretary. I'm here to deal with Ms. Qin's affairs." He smiled and shook hands with the dean. No one dared to speak, and the female teacher's face had long gone pale. Her expression turned dark and cold sweat broke on her forehead as she muttered, "Qin, you clearly told me that they didn't know each other. Dean, if there's nothing else, I'll go back to class first." Qin Ran nodded to them and walked out. Nobody except Secretary Li dared to say a word. Ning Qing had rushed over in anger after receiving Qin Yu's phone call. She was now in a daze and could only stare at Qin Ran's back. Then, she turned to stare at Secretary Li, who was talking to the dean. Her head was buzzing as if this was the first time she saw Qin Ran. As everyone knows, things on Weibo should be subdued as soon and as calmly as possible. 3 days later, there wasn't even a trace of Qin Ran's issue on Weibo, and it couldn't even be found with keywords. It was like a drop of water in the sea, unable to create any waves. Qin Ran had her stitches removed by Cheng Wan. "This is a piece of document." Cheng Wan removed the stitches and asked her to pay attention to it before handing the information over to her. Since the Weibo issue was solved, it was time to catch the mastermind. He didn't act out and just left the matter to Qin Ran for her to handle it herself. Of course, he was afraid she wouldn't handle it well. He had also asked Principal Su at the same time. According to his degree of concern for Qin Ran, he certainly wouldn't sit back and ignore this matter. Qin Ran bit the lollipop in her mouth and looked down at the document. She also had a copy of this document, which was even more detailed than the one Cheng Wan just gave her. "Is it delicious?" Cheng Wan asked. Qin Ran looked up with misty and intoxicating eyes. "What? Your candy," he said softly, pointing at the lollipop. Qin Ran took out another lollipop from her pocket and handed it to him. "Eat it. Don't worry, I have a lot." She didn't wear a jacket today and was wearing a plaid shirt that she had neglected for a long time. It was red and black, and the buttons were all buttoned up. Her shirt was stuffed into her jeans and her waist was very thin. The clear lines of her figure could be seen under the shirt she had tucked into her jeans. The sunlight outside the window hit her face and dazzled slightly on her face. Cheng Wan smiled lazily and stared at it before taking out a cigarette and biting it, but he didn't light it. Cheng Mu came in from outside with a mobile phone. "Master Wan, how do you?" He was about to say something, but as soon as he saw Qin Ran, he swallowed his words and glanced at her subconsciously. The thread on Qin Ran's hand had been removed and she stood up by supporting herself on the table. She heard Cheng Wan say, "Just say it. How Dui has come to Yuncheng to find you." "They're right outside," Cheng Mu glanced at Qin Ran and said blankly. The principal's office. Su Yaoguang knocked on the door and entered. He said in a respectful voice, "Grandpa. Sit." Principal Su pointed to the chair by the door and closed the document in his hand. "I heard you like a girl in school very much." Su Yaoguang seemed surprised. "Grandpa, you're talking about Qin Yu. She borrowed your name and did something. Of course, it doesn't mean that your network can't be used." Principal Su tapped his finger on the table and was silent for a while. Then, he continued to say, "Grandpa just doesn't understand. Why didn't you take a fancy on Qin Ran, and yet found someone like that?" Then, Principal Su pushed the document on the table over to Su Yaoguang. "Look at this." Chapter 85. Tearing Qin Yu's Mask. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 85. Tearing Qin Yu's Mask. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Su Yaoguang's hand paused and he reached over as if he was unaffected. The information that Principal Su had was given to him by Lu Zhaoying and was quite complete. Su Yaoguang flipped over the pictures and his eyes drooped and turned cold. After a long wait, Elder Su saw that Su Yaoguang was silent. He took the cup of tea and took a sip. "Do you have anything to say about Qin Yu? Grandpa wants to hear your opinion." Su Yaoguang turned over the pictures and then put the document back. He looked up at Principal Su and seemed to think for a while before saying in a respectful tone, "Grandpa, why do you think I like her?" Principal Su had lived to this age and was usually good at discerning people. Especially this grandson. Although he was outstanding enough, he was thoughtful and couldn't take over him. At this moment, he didn't expect Su Yaoguang to give this answer and was a little surprised. "You don't like her?" "Yes." "Then why did you disagree when I asked you to get engaged?" "I've never thought of getting married." Su Yaoguang's eyes were clear, but they were still cold and calm. Principal Su was silent for a long time. When he left the principal's office, Su Yaoguang didn't take the document. He didn't go downstairs and just stood at the end of the corridor, watching a group of teenagers playing basketball in the playground not far away. Fresh and bright. His grandpa, Xiao Sheng, and the students of First Middle School, and even Qin Yu herself seemed to think he really liked her. The Lin family's house. "Aunt Zhang, go tidy up one room on the second floor." Lin Qi instructed at the dinner table. Ning Qing had been thinking about Qin Ran and Feng Lucheng for the past 2 days. She looked up in surprise at this. "Is someone coming?" "It's Xinran. She's also in her 3rd year of high school and wants to come back to Yuncheng for the college entrance examination." Lin Qi put down his chopsticks. "I only heard about this from Dihai today." The Meng family was on Lin Jinchuan's grandfather's side. Lin Jinchuan's mother died for many years, but the contact between the two families never stopped. Their business center had located itself in Beijing in recent years. If Meng Xinran wasn't in the 3rd grade this year, she wouldn't have come back. At the dinner table, Lin Jinxian and Lin Qi discussed the matter. Qin Yu was distracted. Several days had passed and Wu Yan had completely lost the news on Weibo's hot search engine. Qin Yu couldn't reach the blogger again. Su Yaoguang used to find her to discuss problems or listen to her playing the violin. She had always been detached from Su Yaoguang, but now he was really behaving like this. She felt more uneasy instead. She had been distracted in class these past few days too. Qin Yu sat on the chair, her long hair sliding down her shoulders, covering her dark eyes. After a long while, she looked up. "Mom, I want to bring my sister over to Teacher Wei in Beijing too. You know, she played the violin before too." Ning Qin was quite surprised. "Bring her over." Qin Yu nodded. Lin Qi was almost done with his dinner, but he didn't leave. He raised his eyebrow in surprise when he heard this. "Have you talked it over with your aunt?" "I will tell aunt myself," she probably won't reject. Qin Yu smiled warmly. Ning Qin naturally knew Lin Wan's character. If Qin Yu was to mention this, Lin Wan might react with disgust. If it had been in the past, Ning Qin would have never let Qin Yu take the risk. But now, Ning Qin remembered meeting the mayor's secretary a few days ago in the office and nodded in a sullen mood. Qin Yu lowered her head and felt her doubts deepen. In the afternoon. Class had just ended. After Qin Ran removed her stitches, she was in a good mood. She was getting ready to go to the hospital to see Chen Shulan when she received a call. It was from Ning Qin. Qin Ran pretended she didn't see it. However, Ning Qin persisted. Qin Ran thought about it and still picked up. Ning Qin was afraid of bumping into an acquaintance and wouldn't bring Qin Ran outside for the time being, so she made an appointment with her at the Lin family's house at night. "It's Ms. Qin." Aunt Zhang glanced up and down at her. "Come in." Qin Ran's right hand was in her pocket, her eyes were narrowed, and she was too lazy to bother about her. Her eyes swept across the room. Ning Qin was sitting on the sofa somewhat absent-minded. Qin Yu was coming downstairs. Qin Ran didn't sit and was still holding a roll of paper in her left hand. Qin Ran stared at Qin Yu for a moment and then looked away. She looked casually at Ning Qin and said, "Why did you call me over?" Ning Qin stood up, stared at Qin Ran, and smiled. Ran, you're here. Your hand." Qin Ran was quite impatient. "No need to be modest with me. What's the matter?" Ning Qin paused and was a little unhappy inside, but she still endured it. "Your sister is going to Beijing in a month. Teacher Wei is very good and I'm preparing for you to head over with her to broaden your knowledge." Qin Ran tilted her head and her hair fell across her forehead. Her eyes were cold and the corner of her mouth was hooked sinisterly as she looked at Qin Yu indifferently. "Go to Beijing? Are you sure she has such good intentions?" Ning Qin was somewhat dissatisfied with her attitude. "What do you mean? Your studies aren't good. If you learn the violin, you can still take the art path. Your sister is doing this entirely for you. Sister, don't get me wrong. I just want good things for you. You also know that your studies." Qin Yu paused and then continued, "Teacher Wei is very famous. Even if he doesn't keep you as his disciple, you will still benefit greatly from his advice." Qin Ran sneered. She had always been like this, cold and mean. She always looked cold and evil when she looked at others. She wasn't as obedient and quiet as Qin Yu. Ning Qin was agitated by her expression. "What's with your expression? Your sister is doing it for your sake. What's the matter?" At this time, Lin Qi came in from outside and handed his briefcase to Aunt Zhang. His gaze swept across Ning Qin and Qin Yu and finally fell on Qin Ran. He smiled. "Oh, Ran is here." He paused and then said, "Why, are you arguing?" "Dad, it's okay, it was my fault. I made her angry." Qin Yu pursed her lips and lowered her head so that her face couldn't be seen. Lin Qi was stunned and he said in a gentle voice, "Talk nicely to your sister. She's not." Bam, Qin Ran raised her hand and threw a few sheets of paper on the table. She stared at Ning Qin and said, "I have nothing to say. I just hope you can manage Qin Yu better. Uncle Lin, you've helped me before, so I didn't hand this over to the court." Qin Yu glanced at the papers on the table and felt uneasy. Lin Qi didn't know about what had happened on Weibo recently. He raised his hand to pick up the papers on the table and flipped through it. His face turned solemn and his gentle expression became heavy. The above was the chat record of Qin Yu contacting Wu Yan, as well as the chat record of her introducing the blogger to Wu Yan. The last one was the bank transfer proof of Qin Yu transferring 200,000 yuan to Wu Yan. Chapter 86. Number 1 Female Detective. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 86. Number 1 Female Detective Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Lin Chi understood the situation after looking at the files. Uncle Lin, look at it first, I'll head back to school. Qin Ran saw that Lin Chi was almost done with the document and said to him before she turned and walked outside. Perhaps it was because of the atmosphere, but Lin Chi wasn't as gentle as before. Qin, you didn't dare to speak. Lin Chi asked the driver to send Qin Ran back to school but was rejected by her, so he sent her to the door. When he came back, his face was solemn and his eyes were cold. This was what Ran just gave me. Take a look. Lin Chi handed the sheets of paper to Ning Qin. Ning Qin looked at it and her heart tightened instantly. Qin Yu felt more and more uneasy and her heart started beating rapidly. She approached the paper in Ning Qin's hand and looked through it. The chat records of her chat with Wu Yan, her chat with the blogger, and a record of her bank transfer to Wu Yan were all printed clearly. The blood on Qin Yu's face drained instantly and the veins on her neck bulged. She had thought of Qin Ran as an ordinary high school student, so she hadn't used a fake identity when she introduced Wu Yan to the blogger. Who knew that these chat records and even the bank transfer records would appear in Ning Qin's hands? The worst she had expected was that Wu Yan had come forward to expose everything. She could refute if that had been the case. However, Qin Yu didn't expect Qin Ran to have not only obtained the chat record silently but also the bank transfer record. When did she have such big abilities? Father, mother, that's not the case. Qin Yu embraced Lin Chi's arm, her eyes quickly misting. Wu Yan is my friend. I didn't know that she asked me to supervise Weibo for this. And she's about to leave first middle school, so how could I not lend her money when she asked? The panic in Qin Yu's heart burst instantly when she felt that Lin Chi didn't relax. Lin Chi lowered his head and glanced at her. Wu Yan is your friend, but you lent her 200,000 yuan without asking. How did she know that you were familiar with the blogger? Qin Yu was a bit stiff and quickly spoke, they all know that I'm close to the blogger. Dad, you also know I only sleep 5 or 6 hours after practicing the violin. When would I have the time for this? Lin Chi glanced at her. Then, he reached out to remove her hand and then turned to head upstairs. He massaged his eyebrows and seemed tired. Let me think about it. Downstairs, Qin Yu didn't dare to follow him. She just collapsed on the sofa, her eyes trembling. Ning Qin ignored her and just sat down after throwing the sheets of paper all over the table. A few days later, a jeep from Beijing was parked next to the school doctor's office. A tall man of about 30 years old got off from the front passenger seat. He had extremely prominent facial features, sharp eyes, cold and thin lips, and a beard emerging from his chin. He looked very clearly like a tough guy. He gave the school doctor's office a few glances. Then, he pushed open the door to enter. Qin Ran's right hand was almost healed, but there was still a slowly fading scar. Cheng Wan was giving her medicine. It was a pale green ointment that Qin Ran had never seen before. It felt cool on her wound. Master Wan, about. The man in his 30s came in while holding a stack of files in his hand. Before he finished, he saw the girl sitting opposite Cheng Wan and stopped. Obviously, ordinary people shouldn't know about this matter. Qin Ran kept the medicine and naturally excused herself. Cheng Wan leaned back and said casually, "Wait for dinner." "Sit, this is how Dui, the great leader of Beijing's criminal investigation team." He turned to look at the man and said slowly, "Just say it." How Dui paused and then stared at Qin Ran for a while. Her eyebrows were lowered and she had a thin finger tapping her lips. Her facial features were exquisite and bright and she seemed a little cold. This expression was rare. He froze for a while and then said a few words to Cheng Wan. He still avoided Qin Ran and didn't say much. After a while, Cheng Mu, Lu Zhaoying, and Qi Qingjun returned. They were all quite happy to see How Dui. How do you I? Lu Xiaoying went to pat him on the shoulder brotherly. Cheng Mu and Qi Qingjun were very serious and respectful. How do you I? These two were obviously extremely respectful to How do you I? How do you I cast a doubtful look at Cheng Mu, signaling at Qin Ran. Cheng Mu shook his head blankly. He laid out the meals. During the meal, Lu Xiaoying rambled on aimlessly. How do you I, is my goddess here yet? Cheng Mu looked at How do you I expectantly. How do you I shook his head. She has something to do and can't leave Beijing. Oh. Cheng Mu was disappointed. This case would be much easier to solve if my goddess was here. How do you I nodded, but because Qin Ran was here, he just said vaguely, yes, this case isn't easy to solve. It's similar to case 712 from 3 years ago. If I can find the person who managed the case, I'm 90% confident that I can catch them. How do you I seem to know some insider stories? Lu Xiaoying supported his chin in doubt. How do you I was the number one in the criminal investigation team and he rarely saw him so subdued. Thus, he was surprised. How do you I, you can be subdued by someone too. The person from 712. How do you I finished eating and put down his chopsticks. He wanted to say something, but when he saw Qin Ran sitting on the side, he swallowed and said slowly, it's nothing. Qin Ran kept her head lowered. While How do you I was talking, she picked up her rice with her chopsticks. What's wrong? Cheng Wan lowered his head. Nothing. Qin Ran shook her head. After dinner, How do you I called Cheng Mu out alone. Who is that girl? How do you I lit a cigarette for himself and narrowed his eyes slightly. A first middle school student. Cheng Mu was expressionless. How do you I huffed a ring of smoke and narrowed his eyes. A student. You're doubtful, too, right? Cheng Mu was extremely calm and undulated. She's not only a student, but her studies are also bad. Of course, she's very good looking. Better than your goddess. Cheng Wan had always been quite proud and How do you I had never seen him behave like this to anyone, so he was a little curious if this girl was unique in any way. How could she compare to my goddess? My goddess is the number one female detective in the criminal investigation team. Chapter 87. Ulterior Motives, Hidden Big Shot. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 87. Ulterior Motives, Hidden Big Shot. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. How do you I turned and glanced at Cheng Mu before nodding. Oh. He wasn't interested anymore and stopped asking. I read the file from 3 years ago. How do you I turned and walked out. I went to Yun Cheng's criminal investigation team. A few days later, the scars on Qin Ran's hand were almost healed. Recently, Cheng Wan, Lu Xiaoying, and the others had been busy. How do you I guarded her like a wolf and Qin Ran rarely went to the school doctor's office. She laid on the table with her eyes slightly closed. Her school uniform was pulled up to cover her chin. Beside her, Lin Siren was explaining a question to Xia Fei. Lin Siren, where did you get this notebook from? Xia Fei pointed to the notebook that Lin Siren had been referring to and asked. Lin Siren turned and glanced at her. Ran gave it to me. But she seldom looked at it. I feel like the name is so familiar. Xia Fei pointed to the 3 smooth words on the first page thoughtfully. Lin Siren smiled and wasn't bothered by this. There are so many people in the world. Hundreds of people in the nation could have this name. It was nothing strange. But. Xia Fei shook her head. I've definitely seen it before. Xia Fei was so adamant about it, so Lin Siren couldn't help but pick up the notebook and turn over a few chapters. The words were written very seriously and every point was clearly explained. The focus was also very clear. Ednel.co Lin Siren was fascinated by it and only returned to her senses when the afternoon self-study was over. Ran, where did you get the notebook from? Lin Siren finally realized that Qin Ran had given her a treasure. Someone gave it to me. Qin Ran blinked and looked at Lin Siren with her eyes squinted casually. Her eyebrows were lazy and smooth. Lin Siren knew Qin Ran quite well and didn't ask more. Instead, she copied Qin Ran, laid on the table, and talked about something else. Ran, it's the school's anniversary a few days later. Our class has organized a program, do you want to? In fact, this program had already begun since school started. It was the 50th anniversary, so the school attached great importance to it. At that time, Qin Ran hadn't transferred to class 3.9 yet. After Qin Ran turned around, she was a little cold and amused. She was good-looking, but the entertainment committee didn't dare to ask her. Until a few days ago, when they finally relented and asked Lin Siren to be the middle woman. Before Lin Siren even said anything, Qin Ran put a book on her head and said in a dull voice, I reject. Lin Siren looked at her face in distress and said she was too arrogant. Qin Ran put on her headphones. She was too noisy. After school in the afternoon, Qin Ran and Lin Siren went downstairs together. She always left late. She just got out of school when the same old man wearing a suit stopped her again. His attitude was tough and persistent. Miss Qin, Madam is looking for you. This time, there were two bodyguards wearing black clothes behind him. Not far away, students cast doubtful glances over at them. Qin Ran took a deep breath. Fine, I'll go with you. 5 minutes later. In a room not far from the school. Madame Feng was sitting by the window, looking at the girl sitting opposite with a steely face. You're the female student that Feng Luqing pushed away all his work to see at night. Madame Feng held the teacup in her hand elegantly, but her stare was full of thorns and ridicule. Qin Ran sat opposite her expressionlessly. Although she had always been cold, she was mostly casual and careless, with the frivolity of it being a game. Her delicate face was expressionless at the moment, and her eyes were deep and hazy. You hid deep enough. Madame Feng threw the teacup on the table with a bam. Should I say that you're highly skilled? What do you want? Qin Ran took a deep breath, her voice undulated. But her eyes looked heavy. Hot and dry. Leave Yuncheng. Madame Feng glanced at her. Don't try to find Feng Luqing in vain. You're a student and can't compete against me. Qin Ran smiled coolly. Her hand tightened around the cup and she said, Madame Feng, you're always like this, dominant and willful. You have no care for anyone's life. She lowered her eyes and almost smashed her cup at the person in front of her. But at that time, her cell phone rang. It was a melodious sound of music. Qin Ran looked down. It was the alarm clock Cheng Wan had set for her, and there was a note on it, apply the green bottle of ointment. Her violent outburst was calmed a little. Qin Ran took a deep breath. She took out her mobile phone and dialed a number. Uncle Feng, come over to Jingsa Cafe. Qin Ran didn't wait for Feng Luqing to come. After the phone call, she went out. As soon as she walked out of the cafe, she saw Lu Xiaoying calling her at the door of the private restaurant opposite. Qin Ran's footsteps paused. She squeezed her phone and bit the candy in her mouth, thinking for a while before walking over to them. Qi Qingjun was absent. But Cheng Mu, Cheng Wan, and Hao Dui were all there. Why aren't you in school? Cheng Wan hung up his phone and lowered his head to ask her. Qin Ran smiled, her face calm. I came out to meet someone. Cheng Mu and the others all heard it, but they thought that Qin Ran meant she was just meeting a fellow classmate and didn't think much about it. Cheng Wan ignored the others, lowered his head, and directly asked Qin Ran, shall we eat lunch together? Qin Ran didn't feel hungry when she was talking to Madame Feng just now. She didn't even drink the tea and also didn't eat the dessert. But now that Cheng Wan asked, she did indeed feel a little hungry. Qin Ran followed Cheng Wan into the restaurant. Lu Xiaoying wasn't interested in the case and also followed them. The three of them ate for less than 10 minutes before Cheng Mu and Hao Dui came in. They looked listless. Lu Xiaoying touched his ear studs and propped his legs up, unsurprised. Why, team leader Qian doesn't want to see you. Hao Dui sat down silently and didn't say anything. Although he was the captain of the Beijing Criminal Investigation Team, there were many such teams in the country. Although this team leader Qian was only in Yuncheng, his reputation was even higher than that of Hao Dui. Lu Xiaoying grinned, looked at Cheng Wan, and then at Qin Ran. Finally, he put a piece of meat onto his bowl, then glanced at Qin Ran and explained, Team leader Qian is Yuncheng's criminal investigation team's captain. He became famous 3 years ago. The most important thing is that he joined a detective agency 3 years ago, so you have probably never heard of him. This detective agency isn't open to the public. Chapter 88. He likes Ran Ran, where is she? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 88. He likes Ran Ran, where is she? Translator. Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios Lu Xiaoying was trying to draw Qin Ran in and explain the matter to her. But he didn't expect that after he finished, Qin Ran remained silent and her expression was still indifferent. She even picked some vegetables for herself with her chopsticks. She felt undulated inside. Lu Xiaoying waited for Qin Ran to ask him about the detective agency, about what team leader Qian did. And so on. Okay. Lu Xiaoying put down his chopsticks, leaned back on the chair, and smiled. Really, why did I tell you all these? She didn't understand, anyway. Lu Xiaoying sighed heavily. Master Wan, it's so hard. Lu Xiaoying looked at Cheng Wan and whispered. Cheng Wan ignored Lu Xiaoying and looked down at Qin Ran's wound instead. Have you applied your ointment? Qin Ran kept wanting to scratch her hand while her wound was healing, so Cheng Wan had taken a tube of cooling ointment for her to apply on time. Yeah, Qin Ran shook her palm and said vaguely. Cheng Wan glanced at her, thinking that her injury had really been too serious. He reached out to pull her right hand and his eyes swept over it before he glanced at Qin Ran and asked, where's the ointment? Cheng Wan's fingers were a little cold. His fingertips were cold white and the blue blood vessels could be seen. There were some calluses on his fingers. Qin Ran looked up at him slightly and saw that he seemed quite upset. She couldn't help but to lean against the chair and laugh softly. It's all right if the wound has healed. Cheng Wan stared at her and didn't speak. Hao Dui seemed annoyed and only ate a few dishes before putting his chopsticks down. He took out a cigarette and put it in his mouth but didn't light it. Cheng Wan glanced at him and said unhurriedly, go out. Hao Dui was stunned for a few seconds, then he reacted and went out with his cigarette case without a word. After a while, Cheng Mu also carried his cigarette case and came out. What's with Master Wan? Hao Dui puffed out and squinted at Cheng Mu. Cheng Mu's face was quite complicated and he shook his head and said, as you saw, this Ms. Qin. Anyways, it's as you've seen. Is she really a student in first middle school? Hao Dui turned and looked doubtfully at Cheng Mu. Could she be like your goddess? Impossible, don't compare anyone to my goddess. At the mention of his goddess, Cheng Mu was agitated. They just finished eating when Cheng Wan's phone rang. It was Jiang Hui. Jiang Hui had helped Cheng Wan due to Qin Ran's matter last time and Cheng Wan didn't reject his appointment. Qin Ran, I'll bring you to play. Lu Xiaoying insisted on bringing Qin Ran. Do you know how to play billiards? I'll teach you. Today was Friday and there was no class tomorrow. Qin Ran had never played pool before and had only seen it on TV. She couldn't win over Lu Xiaoying and so followed them. There were many clubs in First Middle School and many places to play. They reached a club in less than 10 minutes by car. It was rather quiet here and seemed like a high-end club. Qin Ran didn't go inside and went to the washroom instead. By the time she came out, she saw Lin Jinxian holding his phone and standing in the middle of the corridor calling someone. "What are you doing here?" Lin Jinxian saw Qin Ran and was shocked for a moment. He said something to the person on the other end of the phone and then hung up. He was tall and drew a slender, long figure in the corridor. Qin Ran also didn't expect to see Lin Jinxian here. Since the last Weibo incident, Lin Jinxian had come to find her more than once because of Qin Yu. When the younger sister made a mistake, Lin Jinxian, as the older brother, had to clean up her mess. A girl shouldn't run around in such a place, especially girls like you. "Come to my room with me first," Lin Jinxian said and pulled on Qin Ran's sleeves. He turned and said with clear eyes, "Luckily, Qin Yu is here too. She was involved with the issue last time and can apologize to you now." Qin Ran pulled away. Every time Lin Jinxian came to find her, he would stop his car outside the school gates just to discuss Qin Yu. Qin Ran thought for a while and decided to solve his issue first. Lin Jinxian had many friends and they were basically all second generations of the rich families in Yuncheng. When he pushed the door open, the group of people who were playing fiercely suddenly froze. The girl next to Lin Jinxian had one hand in her pocket and her school uniform jacket tied around her waist. She looked indifferent and lazy, and the arrogance oozing from her could hardly be concealed. Qin Ran only recognized Feng Ci amongst the group of people inside. "This is..." When he saw Qin Ran, Feng Ci also froze and felt like he had seen this girl somewhere before. "She's still in high school, don't you dare to mess around." Lin Jinxian then gave a warning look at Qin Yu and reminded her to apologize to Qin Ran. Qin Yu pursed her lips. Lin Jinxian seemed to be very busy. Before he could say anything to Qin Yu, his phone rang again. He tilted his head and told Feng Ci to take care of Qin Ran. Then, he warned the group of young masters again. "That girl is your brother's girlfriend." A woman in a black dress next to Qin Yu whispered to her. "Why is your brother so anxious about her? He's just going out to take a phone call, why did he have to ask young Master Feng to take care of her?" These women always judged the situation and were clear on who they could provoke and who they couldn't. As soon as she spoke, a man with his hair dyed blonde laughed and took a puff from his cigarette. "Yeah, I've never seen her before. Is she your brother's girlfriend?" Their eyes didn't leave Qin Ran. If she was really Lin Jinxuan's girlfriend, then he didn't dare to touch her. This had always been the case. No matter how hard she tried, as long as Qin Ran was there, almost everyone's eyes would be on her. Qin Yu smiled. "Actually, she is my sister and is older by 1 year. She just came to Yuncheng, because in high school. Anyways, she took a gap year and doesn't live in my house now. Second young master, it's an honor for her if you take a fancy towards her." The people around exchanged glances and were all very surprised. Especially this second young master. He stared at Qin Ran's long, straight legs, and then at her cold and casual face and took a puff from his cigarette again. He carried a glass of wine over. At the same time, Jiang Hui's room was quiet. Besides Lu Zhaoying, there were only a few people inside. These people covered the sky with their hands in Yuncheng, but sitting beside Cheng Wan, none of them other than Jiang Hui dared to speak much. Cheng Wan didn't drink, he just took a teacup and looked at the door. After a long while, he turned his head slightly and knocked distractedly on the table. He looked at Lu Zhaoying and asked with dark eyes, "Where is she?" Chapter 89. Irritable Ran Ran, Online Discrimination. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 89. Irritable Ran Ran, Online Discrimination. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Lu Zhaoying had been discussing with Hao Dui. After hearing this, he froze. Yeah, where's Qin Ran? He put down his cup, looked towards the door, and saw that nobody was there. She told me she was going to the washroom just now. Cheng Wan stared at him blankly and didn't speak. Oh, no, she told me when you were talking to Uncle Jiang. Lu Xiaoying muttered, took out his cell phone, and gave it a glance. Qin Ran was gone for way too long. Lu Xiaoying knew her well and knew she wouldn't disappear without saying anything. He checked his phone and saw that Qin Ran had indeed left him a message on WeChat. She said she went to C5's room. Lu Xiaoying narrowed his eyes. She said she met an acquaintance. This club was based on a membership system and the membership card was 5 million yuan, so those who could come here weren't ordinary people. Master Wan, does Qin Ran have such rich friends? Lu Xiaoying thought about it and felt like something was wrong. She was such a poor person. Cheng Wan glanced at him and looked down again, not in the mood to talk to Jiang Hui. Lu Xiaoying still felt like something was wrong. While replying to Qin Ran, he stood up to find her. Cheng Wan's index finger tapped on the edge of the table, his fingertips white and transparent. I'm going to the washroom. Jiang Hui nodded. But he was stunned when he saw Cheng Wan walking out. Wait, they had a washroom in their room, and there were even 2 small cubicles. Why were both of them going out? You absolutely won't imagine what they're doing it for. How Dui finally lit his cigarette after Cheng Wan was gone. He wouldn't know that the 2 of them were doing it for a high school student. They're really too crazy. For that kid named Qin Ran. Jiang Hui laughed. She's indeed very pleasing to the eye. How Dui? Ouyang Wei has never even received such praise from you. You're not the kind to look at the face. Aren't you going too far? At this time, inside room C5. Feng Xiai, you're not drinking. The woman with long wavy hair curled up next to him with a glass of wine. Feng Xiai smiled, straightened his clothes, and said in an icy voice, my girlfriend doesn't like me to drink. The woman's face stiffened. Feng Xiai continued, laughing, oh, and don't lean so close to me. She doesn't like the smell of perfume. The woman turned away in embarrassment. Someone next to him chuckled. Young Master Feng, you're serious this time. Who is it? You've hidden her for 2 years and haven't brought her to meet us. Feng Xiai didn't speak and just turned to look at the woman that Lin Jinxian had brought over. There were many wolves here, so he had to look out for Lin Jinxian. The man with blonde hair still cared about Lin Jinxuan's remarks and also Feng Xi's presence, so he didn't do anything at the moment and only handed Qin Ran a glass of wine. Qin Ran didn't take it. She just lifted her head slightly and said, sorry, but I don't drink. When she said this, her cold tone was even lazier than usual. Her reddish thin lips were pursed distractedly and she was looking at the direction of the door. The blonde man didn't even feel annoyed at being rejected. He just stared at her face for a while, then he drank the rest of the wine in a gentlemanly manner and laughed while raising his glass. My apologies. Qin Yu's smile was stiff. When the blonde guy came back, she couldn't help but say, young Master Qian, why didn't you talk to my sister more? He bit his cigarette, his eyes still on Qin Ran. She was brought here by your brother, after all. Qin Yu smiled and stopped talking. Lin Jinxian couldn't be here forever. Lin Jinxian hurried back and frowned when he saw the blonde guy sitting next to Qin Ran. He hastened his footsteps subconsciously. Sorry for making you wait. He apologized to Qin Ran. Then, he turned his head to Qin Yu and said in a harsh tone, Yuer, come here and apologize to your sister. Qin Yu pursed her lips and lowered her head. She didn't speak. Lin Jinxuan's voice was solemn. Qin Yu. Sister, I'm sorry. I was involved in the Weibo matter and I shouldn't have mentioned that blogger to Wu Yan. Can you forgive me? Qin Yu bit her lip. She always knew how to make use of her face. At this moment, tears dripped from her eyes, making her look extremely delicate and pitiful. Qin Ran smiled, not in the least bit bothered. She said very lazily, "No, Qin, you didn't expect." Qin Ran to give this answer and her face went stiff immediately, and her expression couldn't be maintained. "Sister, I know you can't accept me yet, but I really want to apologize to you." Qin Yu looked up, her tone sounding aggrieved. Feng Xi and the people in the room didn't know what had happened, but they all looked over. Qin Ran smiled and didn't speak to Qin Yu, but looked at Lin Jinxian instead. "Do you see that? She was clearly the one who did something wrong. She was the one who revealed the post on Weibo, who transferred money from her bank. Nobody forced her to do those things. She's so smart, why didn't she tell Wu Yan about the consequences of those things? But the moment she spoke, she made it seem like I was the one who bullied her." Qin Yu's face turned pale, she started shaking and said tearfully, "I didn't. I came here with you today just to say it in front of you." Qin Ran ignored Qin Yu and continued to look at Lin Jinxian. "She can apologize, but I won't forgive her. You don't have to come to find me about this matter anymore and ask me to give up. Sister, I really didn't mean it." Qin Yu's tears flowed out. She didn't expect Qin Ran to dare to say such things in front of so many people. Wasn't she afraid they would call her malicious? "Don't resort to petty tricks with me. Anyone who has you as their sister is truly unfortunate." Qin Ran smiled, her delicate eyebrows stained with coldness. Then, she nodded politely to Lin Jinxian and said, "I have other matters, so I'll take my leave." By the time Lin Jinxian returned to his senses, Qin Ran was already heading outside. He chased her immediately. "Qin Yu called, brother." Lin Jinxian simply ignored her and his footsteps didn't even pause for a moment. Qin Yu's face turned as pale as paper instantly. Lin Jinxian followed Qin Ran, afraid that something would happen to her. Most of the people in the club weren't easy to provoke, and even he didn't dare to cause trouble here. Qin Ran's face was too provocative. Lin Jinxian sped up, and as soon as he turned a corner, he saw Qin Ran. When he saw the man standing beside her, he paused and stared at the man with a rare expression of shock. Be Nov calm. Chapter 90. Why did you tell her? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 90. Why did you tell her? Lin Jinxian had felt it was strange to see Qin Ran here. She didn't look like someone who would come to this club. When Lin Jinxian saw someone talking to Qin Ran, his eyes narrowed slightly. That man was facing Qin Ran and his head was lowered. Because of the angle and the dim lighting of the clubhouse, half of his face was covered by Qin Ran, but the man glanced over from a distance and made Lin Jinxian feel his throat tighten. His mind exploded and Lin Jinxian felt like his eyes looked very familiar. Feng Xi had just told him that two people had come to Yuncheng, that their identities were fearful even to Feng Xi and he didn't dare to mention them. It was so much so that Lin Jinxian deeply remembered their faces. But he never knew the names of the two people. There seemed to be a clear sound in his mind right now. Why was Qin Ran with this person? Around the corner. Qin Ran realized that Lin Jinxian had come out, but she didn't want to have too much entanglement with the Lin family, so she didn't stop to greet him. Why are you out? She saw Cheng Wan and raised her eyebrows. Cheng Wan turned and blocked Lin Jinxian before saying, I'm going to the washroom. Lu Xiaoying walked around Cheng Wan broodingly and didn't bump into Qin Ran. After Qin Ran returned to the room, he kept insisting on teaching Qin Ran how to play pool. How Dui saw that Qin Ran entered and lowered his voice while talking to Jiang Hui. He had been talking to Lu Xiaoying, but when he saw him standing next to Qin Ran, he stopped mentioning it subconsciously. Qin Ran noticed it but wasn't bothered. She followed Lu Xiaoying to play pool. Qin Ran had never played before and was a little curious. She stood and watched him play, but was stopped by Cheng Wan when she was about to try. Your right hand isn't healed. Cheng Wan had been talking to Jiang Hui when he said to Qin Ran in a concise manner. Qin Ran didn't even touch the cue and just watched Lu Xiaoying explain to her the rules and theoretical knowledge of pool. Lin Jinxian walked back thoughtfully to room C5. Qin Yu felt like his condition was strange. Brother. Qin Yu pursed her lips and looked at Lin Jinxian. Do you believe my sister's words? You are always like this. No matter how hard I try, I can't win against her. Lin Jinxian returned to his senses and looked at Qin Yu. You have your wrongs in this matter regarding your sister. From her perspective, she isn't totally unreasonable. Since she doesn't want to talk to you, you shouldn't provoke her in the future. The people beside Qin Ran couldn't be provoked. Lin Jinxian had been quite puzzled before. The Qin family had no background, so where had Qin Ran gotten Qin Yu's transfer records from? But now he seemed to understand. Qin Yu lowered her head and clenched her hands. She didn't expect Lin Jinxian to say this. Lin Jinxian had always been like this. No matter what happened, he was always so sensible and would think from the other person's perspective. Qin Yu had spent more than 10 years trying to make Lin Jinxian stand by her side. The next day. It was Saturday. Feng Lucheng was waiting in the room, holding a teacup in his hand. He kept looking at the direction of the door. The door was pushed open by a pair of cold hands. He got up quickly and pulled the chair on the side, then bowed his head in shame. Miss Qin, I have already warned my wife about the matter and she will never dare to look for you again. Qin Ran picked up the cup on the table and swayed it gently and slowly. Okay. Feng Lucheng observed Qin Ran's expression and determined that she didn't really care, so he sat back down. He shook the bell and the meal was served. Then, he continued to say, someone has been trying to find Qian Dui and check on the matter. Qin Ran raised her eyebrows and didn't seem to care. Oh. I heard that the poison dragon has appeared again. Feng Lucheng paused and looked at her again. It has been 3 years, you should come out now. Uncle Feng, let's eat. Qin Ran knocked on the table with her hand. Okay. Is your hand healed? Feng Lucheng sighed heartily, but his attention was focused on the right hand she was using to hold her cup. Qin Ran put down the cup and spread her right hand for him to see. Feng Lucheng observed that a layer of meat had grown over the wound and traces of the stitching were still there. It looked like it had indeed been healed well, so he sighed in relief and said, then I can report well now. The chef had already started serving. Qin Ran stared blankly at the white porcelain plate in the chef's hand. It was steamed corn with sweet potatoes. Was there anything special? Was there anything different? No, whose private chef would serve such a dish? Was he a professional chef? Cheng Wan had been practicing with his scalpel against the mannequin recently as he had an operation today. He usually received 1 operation per month. It had been almost 2 months since he had come to Yuncheng, and this was his 2nd operation. There was nobody in the school doctor's office and it was very quiet. Cheng Wan left all the keys of the school doctor's office to Qin Ran. Qin Ran held a computer and sat at Cheng Wan's desk to do her homework. Suddenly, the door was slammed open from the outside. Lu Xiaoying came in hurriedly, followed by a haughty "How dui?" They looked around the school doctor's office and didn't see Cheng Wan. Where's Master Wan? Lu Xiaoying panted. Qin Ran had her legs propped up and was flipping through a book. She looked up and said, have you forgotten that he has surgery today? Shit. Lu Xiaoying banged on the table. He had always used Cheng Wan as his backbone and couldn't think of what to do now. I really forgot. I'm going to find Qian Dui. How Dui couldn't find Cheng Wan and turned around. Lu Xiaoying wiped the sweat on his face. He might not see you. Wait for me. What's the matter, why are you so anxious? Qin Ran glanced at Lu Xiaoying in How Dui's face, put down her book, leaned back, and raised her eyebrows. Lu Xiaoying had nothing to hide from her, so he said sullenly, "Last night, how DUI had Qingmu check something, but we haven't seen him and he has disappeared. Master Wan definitely didn't bring his phone into the surgery room. Go to the hospital and wait there. When he comes out, tell him about this." How Dui had already been vexed over Qingmu's disappearance, but when he heard Lu Xiaoying telling Qin Ran about this, he turned over and reprimanded impatiently. "Why did you tell her? Are you messing around?